You're all clapping because this is the last presentation of the evening. Is thing on? Thank you, and thanks for having me. I want to thank my son Scott, who's 24, for being here and doesn't recognize hardly anybody in this room, but he's heard a lot of the stories. And my business partner John Holland, we were the first commercial sponsor for the Near Hall of Fame. And his buddy Dave Monaco. We've traveled a lot of roads together, had a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. There are quite a number of people who have plaques on the wall, not today, but on the near wall, who had their lives taken too soon by the sport we love. People who died on the track or on the way to the track. This is probably the first induction of a racer whose life was saved by this sport. Andy Santerre is 17 years old. He's lying in a hospital in intensive care. He might not make it. When Andy was a boy, his dad had a tow truck, and his dad would take Andy and haul a car up to the old half-mile dirt Cherryfield Speedway, where his dad, before Andy was born, had won a whole lot of races. And he'd tow a car up there and turn him loose. And Andy'd get to drive on dirt, at a very young age. But there was nowhere in Maine for a kid to go auto racing before he got his driver's license. There was no go-karts. There were no Legends cars or Bandoleros or anything like the opportunities the kids have today. So at 17, Andy has a rare disease. He's lying in intensive care. His lungs had collapsed. His kidneys had stopped working. Machines were keeping Andy alive. And a friend comes to visit. He's carrying a Kenny Schrader die-cast car. And he tells Andy, who can hear him but can't answer back, he said, "Come on, you got to get up and get out of here. We're going racing." And the rest, as they say, is history. Andy did just that. Got into a car at 19, raced at local tracks. I am not going to give you his entire career because by that time dinner will be served. However, there are a few highlights. And his career is well detailed in today's program. You can read it there. Raced at a lot of tracks and worked his way up, tried the ACT Series, was Rookie of the Year in Busch Grand National North, got a win, got third in points, and prophetically was named most popular driver. Because one of the things that Andy has excelled at throughout his entire racing career as a driver, as an owner, as a team manager, is surrounding himself with fantastic people. People want to be associated with Andy's racing. Engine builders, crew chiefs, car owners, sponsors, many of whom are here today. I think half the state of Maine is here to laugh at Brad's jokes and honor Andy Santerre. If Brad Layton is not his generation's Clint Boyer, I just don't know what. Totally unfiltered, great speech. Congratulations to all of today's inductees. So Andy attracted a lot of great talent to help him in his racing endeavors. Along the way, met and married the love of his life, started a great family who are here today with him. Decided to go racing south. Rookie of the Year in Busch Grand National with a new team, won the pole at Richmond, and then started out the very next season full of promise with a bad crash at Daytona, broke his leg. But again, people wanted to help Andy. So an experimental program at Wake Forest Medical Center in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, took Andy's 6-month expected rehabilitation and had him back in the car in 3 months and competing and going on and winning. He has a Busch Grand National win at Pikes Peak. It came on the heels of a North win at Loudon. Boy, July of 99 was a great month after that rehab. So I don't want to detail Andy's career, but I do want to talk about one race in particular that I was watching this morning on YouTube. Bristol, Tennessee. fastest 5/8 mile in the country. And here's Andy with his small team, no sponsor, just a plain white race car. And Andy finds himself in the lead because his crew chief, Stan Meserve, who stands here tonight, told our Fox pit reporter, Dick Berggren, who's here today, we've got a long-run car. We're going to leave him out there on old tires. We're going to run longer than anybody else. We're going to take track position, and we're going to be in good shape to win this thing. Well, what he didn't tell Dick on the air, which I learned at the table this afternoon, you know how everybody likes to help Andy? Well, who is he battling for the lead in this race but Kevin Harvick, who's going to go on to win that 2001 Busch Series championship? And Kevin's running second, and Andy's leading a lot of that race. And Kevin calls down to his crew chief and goes, who's leading this thing? Who's in that white car? Well, it's Andy Santerre. And Kevin is a very quick study. You're going to enjoy him on Fox next year. It took him all of one lap to deduce that his crew chief had a close personal relationship with Andy Santerre's sister, Luann, who's also here today. And Kevin knew right then and there what setup Andy had on that race car, because it was exactly the same as his. And he keys the radio and he tells his crew chief, if he wins this race, I am going to kick your ass. Andy led 75 laps that day. Finally did have to stop. Coming back up through the pack, got taken out by a lap car. But everybody, including my broadcast partners, Larry McReynolds and Darrell Waltrip, took great notice how competitive that car was that day. Well, after that one Busch Series win and a lot of success, Andy decided that, well, we'll go back to the Busch North Series. But instead of doing it the traditional way and moving his operation back up to northern New England, he raced out in North Carolina, had a shop there, had a team there, had people there. So he races in Busch Grand National North and wins the championship 4 consecutive years, 2002 to 5, and that is why he is being honored on this stage today. And then at the end of 2005, after that 4th consecutive championship, he took off his helmet and retired. To family and to team ownership and then team management, Rev Racing, NASCAR's diversity program, and then after another year, decided racing's been a lot of fun, but we're moving back to Maine, where you'll find him today, taking care of a great classic car collection and having a lot of fun. And when he called and said, would you do this induction? Well, everybody wants to help Andy, right? There's absolutely no way I could say no. So I'm very honored to be here because Andy Santerre gave a lot to racing. He got a lot from racing. After all, it was racing that saved his life. So on this 5th day in November 2023, it is my great honor to induct Andy Santerre into the New England Auto Racing Hall of Fame.
Mike's been a big part of my career over the years. And, I'm just honored that he could come here and do this. I know he's a busy guy, and when I found out I was going in, he was the first call. So, but also my daughter Sarah's gonna. I guess she'll bring it up. But I have the first car, my first race car, and I want you guys to see it. You can bring it up now and set it in the chair. Mike talked a little bit about it. He and I didn't know what each other was going to talk about, so it was kind of cool. But this car here, you'll hear a little bit more in my speech, but I'll set it on the chair so you can see. By the way, it's the number 25 Folgers Kenny Schrader car. This is 35 years old. It's been in my bedroom that I grew up in as a kid at my mom's house, and I had to glue a few pieces back together, but it's pretty cool. It still looks pretty good. Want to thank April May for working with us with all the seating arrangements, because we had a few changes along the way, and my wife, she's used to doing banquets and whatnot, so every time I'd tell her, hey, can you change this seat or find that, She said, "You're going to make me call her again? Do you know how much she has going on?" So thank you very much for all you've done. But it's an honor to get inducted today. It's even more special because I'm going into the Hall of Fame with two of my good friends, Brad Layton and Teddy Marsh. Congrats to both of you, and congratulations to all of this year's inductees. Being recognized as so many great drivers from New England is an honor. A big thank you to Mike Joy for the introduction. Mike was the first person I thought of when I was asked who I would like to do my introduction. Mike paid me the greatest compliment of my racing career at my last championship banquet in 2005. He spoke about a few drivers who never made it to the big dance but had the talent. Mike named Sam Ard, Richie Evans, and me. It was a huge compliment, to say the least, but excuse me, one I'll never forget. Thank you, Mike. So Mike and John Holland from New England Race Fuels both helped me a lot as I climbed the racing ladder. I know John's here today, and wanted to mention that they both helped me a lot, and they supplied me with Sunoco race fuel throughout my racing career. And as a New England native, Mike always spoke highly of me on the national broadcast and promoted my name throughout the NASCAR industry. My father, Louis Santerre, who Mike mentioned earlier, he grew me to race at a young age. He had a tow truck and a junkyard in the backyard and had raced himself in the 60s before I was born. Our family home in Cherryfield, Maine is at the entrance to the old Cherryfield Speedway. At the young age of 5, my dad would have me stand in the seat and steer old cars while he pushed me with his wrecker tow truck. So my grandmother didn't really like that, and my mother was always yelling at us, but my father told him to get back in the house. He's fine. But I was driving around that old junkyard as soon as I could reach the pedals. Dad had a hard time. Dad had a hard time going to stock car races. I was interested in stock car racing, and I'd mention it to Dad because I'd heard all the stories, but I never got to see my dad race. He stopped racing in 1968, and that was the year I was born. So I'd asked him to take me, but he had a hard time going to the stock car races because he told me it was a sickness. And at the time, I had no idea what he meant, but I sure do now. He would take me to Beech Ridge every year on his motorcycle, and it was quite a trip. We would make the 4-hour trip, watch the races, and stay in a motel, which was a big deal from a kid from Cherryfield. I looked forward to that trip every year for my birthday until I became a teenager and I was too cool to ride on the back. But my dad really loved the dirt at the Ridge. We lost Dad in 2020, but he would have been proud to be here with us tonight. My mom, Jessie, doesn't leave home much these days, but she is proud of my accomplishments on and off the track. I call her every morning on my way to work to check in. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for all your sacrifices. I also want to thank my 3 sisters who are here tonight. They've always had my back, and it means a lot to have you here with me to celebrate. Lori, Julie, and Luann. I couldn't have gotten into the Hall of Fame alone, but my speech tonight is about all the people who made it possible for me to be standing here today receiving this award. My racing career started a lot differently than most. My cousin, David Dow, and I talked about building a stock car in the fall of 1987. I had bought a 77 Chevy Nova from his classmate and had it in my dad's garage for us to start building around Christmas that year. A few days later, I became very ill very quickly and ended up in the hospital right after New Year's Eve in 1988. The doctors diagnosed me with Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's a virus that attacks the central nervous system and muscular systems, and I ended up paralyzed and in intensive care on a ventilator fighting for my life. David Dow showed up in the ICU with my first stock car, and I brought it here today so you could all see it. It's the 25 Folgers car. David told me, "Get your ass out of that bed. We're going racing." And I spent 87 days in the hospital, 33 days on that ventilator. My kidneys failed, my lungs collapsed, but seeing that car on the nightstand gave me the motivation I needed to get out of the hospital. I was confined to a wheelchair for a while after going home, and I spent months learning to walk again. By the end of that summer, I was getting better, and I purchased my first car with David's help and a bank loan, and we prepared that car to race over the winter. I raced for the first time at Speedway 95 the following season. We got our first win about halfway through the season, and they tore my engine down in tech. Although we were legal, we had to get parts to reassemble the engine. So the engine that came with the car was built at Butler and McMaster Automotive, a well-known engine shop in Hollowell, Maine. I called to get parts and spoke to Dave McMaster, one of the owners. That phone call was the start of a lifelong friendship. We won a few races that year, but my buddy David Dow wanted to go further. We decided to build a new car and engine and try to win a championship. I was an oil truck driver and he was a fireman, so we needed a lot of help to pull that off because neither one of us had a whole lot of money. So we were introduced to Stan Meserve, the current Hall of Famer, at Distance Racing Products in Unity, Maine. And he told us to bring him a Camaro and he'd build us a new race car. My next stop was to see Dave McMaster about a new engine, and he agreed to work with us. We got the car and engine from two of the best guys in the business and went out and won that championship that year with the financial backing of two great friends of mine, Steve Cole and Wayne Wright. Winning my first championship was a highlight, but the friendships I developed with Stan and Dave are what helped me progress in my racing career. Stan and his wife Diane, have been great friends and mentors to Sue and I over the past 30 years, and we made a lot of memories together with more still to come. Stan and I made the trip from sunny southern Florida to be here with us today. We love you guys, and Stan, it's an honor to be in the Hall of Fame with you, my friend. Dave McMaster has been one of my best friends over the past 30 plus years. We spent thousands of hours working on race cars, engines. We even snowmobiled together every winter. We even built my new garage together. But I had to tell Dave to leave his micrometer at home and use a tape measure. He is pretty particular, to say the least. Dave gave me and Sue a place to live early in my career, and at one point even gave me a job. Dave's been a big part of my racing career, but more than racing, Dave taught me a lot about life, and I know I can count on him for anything, anytime. I can't thank you enough for all you've done for me, Dave, over the years. Thank you. So in 1991, David Dow and I decided to run some ACT Tour races. We sold our Camaro, our championship Camaro. We sold at the last race at Unity. We won the race, and a guy that had won the lottery wanted that car, and it was a perfect time to sell it. So we sold that car that night, and we went right to Stan and said, we need an ACT Tour car. Well, they were super late models at the time. They were pretty expensive. Stan says, I've got a beauty. So he said, so we bought the car. It was a used Dan Beatty car that Stan had taken in on trade, and we got it ready. Dave built us a new engine, and we went to Lee Speedway opening day for the ACT rookie race. We won the rookie race that day, but destroyed the car in a heat race the next day and had no more money. On the quiet ride home, I remember in a Dodge pickup, single cab with an open trailer, David and I asked David, I said, what are we going to do? And I'll never forget that conversation. Dave said he would sell his old lady's car, and we could use that money to have Stan fix the race car. So she was sitting in the middle, and she didn't say much that day, but when we got home on Monday morning, he sold his old lady's Buick. So we got the car stripped down, took it down to Stan, and he put all new parts, new front clip and all that, and David's wife was fine with it. So sadly, we lost David to a brain tumor in 2018. He would have been so proud of this Hall of Fame induction, and without him, it wouldn't have been possible. Toward the end of the 1992 season, Dave McMaster called me and asked me if I wanted to test the Busch North car. He said that the O'Connor's NASCAR North team was looking for a driver. I didn't know anything about the NASCAR North cars, but I sure did like the idea of driving a car that I didn't have to pay for. And my mom and dad liked that too. So I tested the car at my local track, Speedway 95 in Bangor, for Mike and Pam O'Connor, and they offered me the ride and a chance to race for the Rookie of the Year in 1993 on the NASCAR North Series. Mike and Pam also gave me a job working in the shop, and I learned so much during the 2 years I drove for them. They treated me like a son, and I'll never forget my first win at Apple Valley Speedway, driving the famed number 15 O'Connor GMC Lumina. Thank you for all you've done for me, Mike and Pam, and for treating me like a son. I greatly appreciate it. Lots of amazing things happened to me that night in Apple Valley, New York. I got my first NASCAR win. I met my future wife at the track just before qualifying. I didn't know it was going to happen that night, but she was doing a marketing internship at Watkins Glen Speedway and was at the race interviewing drivers for the upcoming race at the Glen. I saw her the very next night at Holland Speedway and decided that I needed to know more about her. So we raced at the Glen the following week, and I got her number. I called her the next day, and we went on our first date to Jennerstown Speedway the next week, and the rest is history. I proposed to her in 1995 in Victory Lane at Thompson Speedway after getting my first win as an owner driver. She said yes, and we married in 1996. She has been my rock for about 30 years, and I couldn't have done this without her. Thank you, babe. I met many influential people in the mid-90s, including Steve and Peter Prescott from Team EJP. EJP has sponsored me my entire racing career. I'm proud to say I am employed there now and take care of a beautiful car collection. Steve Prescott is here with us today. I appreciate all your family has done for me over the years and for your continued friendship. Thank you, Steve. I want to mention Quint Bovair from QBR Racing. Quint helped me a lot when I started my own Bush North team. I really didn't have a whole lot of money, but I knew I needed to build a car if I was going to continue to race. And we went up to Quint's, and he basically gave me a Laughlin chassis and put a body on it for me and told me to pay him whenever I could come up with it. He knew I was good for it. So thank you to Quint. Dale Averill is here with us today. He's another longtime friend and supporter. Dale designed all my race car paint schemes and spotted for me during my championship seasons. Thank you so much, Dale and Trish, for coming to celebrate with us today. So Sue and I moved south to run in the NASCAR Busch Series in 1998. I won Rookie of the Year and earned a pole at Richmond, but I was involved in a crash on lap 18 at the first race of the 1999 season at Daytona and broke my leg. I spent a week in the hospital and 3 months of rehab before getting back into the driver's seat. The highlight of that season was my first and only Busch Series win at Pikes Peak in Colorado. In 2000, I was hired to drive a part-time schedule in the Busch Series with Team Renzi Motorsports. So I decided to build my own Busch North car to run a limited schedule up here in the Northeast, which was my home. My good friend, Dave Davis, was building cars and hanging bodies in North Carolina. He and I had met in Maine back in 1996 when he hung a few bodies for me before we both went south at about the same time. Dave let me build my car in his shop in Denver, North Carolina. His crew, they called me Lightning Santerre, as I lightened every part I could before I installed it. So I then hooked up with Teddy Marsh and Marsh Racing, and you all know Teddy, because he's here today. And his crew fielded the car for me that year out of Old Lyme, Connecticut. We won 2 out of 3 of those races that year, including New Hampshire and Watkins Glen, which were the biggest purses that year. And I needed that to pay for that car. So Teddy and I have remained great friends, and Dave Davis and his wife Terry are living back in Maine now. So Dave and I spend a lot of time together, and we also snowmobile together. That's the thing to do in Maine in the winter. Thank you, Dave and Terry, for being here. And thank you to Teddy Marsh and his wife Linda. And congrats on your induction today, Teddy, as well. In 2001, I had a great opportunity to start my own Busch Series race team with a good friend, Mike Reese. We had sponsorship to run 6 races that year and had high hopes to gain sponsorship to do a full season. As Mike mentioned earlier, that was the year that we should have won Bristol, but it didn't work out. But Stan Reserve was my crew chief that year, and we almost won a couple races. The economy tanked after 9/11, so I decided to close the Busch shop and decided to go back racing the Busch East Series full-time in 2002. We had 23 races in the Northeast that year, and I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. I knew it would be a lot of commuting and that I couldn't do it alone. I had a new dually and a single-car trailer, enclosed trailer, but I knew there's no way I was going to drive that many miles and race by myself. So I leaned on my good friend, Mike French. He's better known as Tex, with a cowboy hat. You've seen him today. I leaned on him to help me drive my race hauler. Tex and Alice made the trip from South Carolina to surprise me here today. We won the championship that year, and there's no way I could have done it without you, Tex. Thank you very much. This isn't in my speech, but my wife and Tex, they got me pretty good yesterday. Tex has a collection of old Chevy Chevelles, and Camaros and Chevelles are my favorite cars. I would take that over anything. And I told Tex, one day I'm going to own one of your Chevelles. So we made a deal a few years ago that I was going to have his 66 Malibu. And we've never been able to arrange it so I could get it and get down there and call it back. It's never worked out. So yesterday, my wife tricked me into going to Walmart to get drinks for the little party we were having last night. But lo and behold, I didn't know Tex was going to be there. I didn't know he was able to make it. But as we got there, and Tex and Alice surprised us, and then as we were leaving the parking lot, I saw Tex's hauler, or his truck, his dually, with an open trailer, and there's the 66 Chevelle. So, another good moment for sure. So, I'm almost done. Thank you. So in 2003 and 2004, I won the championship driving for Bessie Motorsports in the Aubuchon Hardware Chevrolet. These were two of my best years I ever had competitiveness-wise in racing. Thank you to Joe Bessie and Nancy Bessie for your support. Sue and I welcomed our first child, Sarah, in 2003. She's never met a stranger, and we are so proud of the young lady she has become. 4 years later, we welcomed Sammy into the world. She is our athlete and inherited both mine and Sue's competitiveness. She's a great kid, and we are very proud of her, too. Sammy and Sarah are here with us today, along with Sarah's boyfriend, Tyler. My girls mean the world to me. So my last year of driving was for Grisco Racing in 2005. Steve and Peg Griswold had been our friends and competitors for years, and they asked me to manage their team with the hopes of winning another championship. I had not planned on racing that year. I was going to prepare the cars for Mike Stefanik and Brad Layton. But after Steve and Peg's first visit to the shop in North Carolina, Peg made it a point to tell Steve that I would be driving. We didn't have a sponsor at that point, but she was adamant it was going to happen, so we got a car ready and fielded a 3-car team. We all had success that year and ended up 1-2 in the championship points, but the best part of the whole deal is the lasting friendships we made with Steve and Peg, Mike and Julie Stefanik, and Brad and Lynn Layton. Thank you, Peg, for fighting to put me in the car. I retired as a champion because of you. Peg is here with us today, celebrating mine and Brad's inductions. We lost Steve, unfortunately, in 2013, but I know the big guy's looking down at Brad and I right now with his big grin. He's a happy guy. I want to mention a few more people who made it possible for me to be standing here today. Roger Tryon, my crew chief for all 4 championships. Couldn't have done it without you, Rog. And thank you for all the great years. And Tracy, thank you for letting him help me every weekend. So, I want to thank all the fans, the officials, crew members, sponsors who have made my career possible. And thanks to everyone who's helped me over the years. I am truly blessed, and I will treasure this award forever. Thank you all.